YouTube's me, Auaroa George Page, come to you live on YouTube. Well, I saw this. This was dropped about a few hours ago. I saw it while I was just doing a little surfing. As you know, back in 2019, this young man, Elijah Mcclain, was murdered by Auaroa, Colorado police. Now, the story of Elijah goes back to, around 2019 of August, almost 2 years ago, pretty much 2 years ago. And Elijah was walking home. He was wearing a mask. I think it was kind of cold at night. Colorado, that part of the world, it hits, certain temperatures by a certain time of year. And somebody, some so-called neighbor called him, thinking he was a criminal and sketchy. So he was stopped by 3 police officers. And while they were saying he was just under arrest, they put him in a chokehold. Well, the chokehold forced Elijah to go unconscious, and he was giving a sedative to try to wake him up. Anyway, the Colorado police, arrested as you know, they usually put police in the cover. They snatch him up and say, "Well, we will hold you for, just hold him on a charge," but nothing came out of it. Elijah was in the hospital for a few days. He died a few days later. And the officers, one officer resigned and 2 were still on the force, were on social media, even showing a chokehold, kind of used on Elijah. Now, this started moving. This was like a little year before. The year before, I think, of the George Floyd situation. As you know, you remember George Floyd, he was murdered by a police officer using a police officer's a movement where they had his knee against the back of his neck, and he couldn't breathe. So, and Elijah was walking home. He was a quiet young man. He was shy and introverted. He just didn't want any trouble. His mother, she pushed and pushed, and she got support by Black Lives Matters, celebrities. They went after the mayor. They went after the, state attorney. Anybody can hear. And even there was a petition that was going around to get these officers and the paramedics that was involved, prosecuted for manslaughter. So today it was official that the 3 officers that were involved, 2 that were still on the force, and the one that sequentially quit, and also 2 of the paramedics have been charged with manslaughter. Now, no details yet as when the trial is going to be, and like I said, it's hard to prosecute, especially paramedics, as they're supposed to be the ones who are supposed to be there to really save lives, and it's just. This young man was minding his business. He was a massage therapist. He loved to play the violin. He was a vegetarian. He just was this young man who just was minding his own business, just walking down the street. He was wearing a mask. He wasn't doing anything wrong. It was one thing if somebody breaks in the house. But his mother, I think she got some justice for her son. I'm glad for that, because, your child should never be buried before you. That's like, you remember, I like to quote movies. I shouldn't quote it, but remember the movie John Q would say, "I'm not burying my son is burying me." And I think his mother, I think her name is Miss Sheena. I don't want to miss her name, but I think she's glad that she's getting justice for her son. Like I said, Elijah was 23 years old at the time of his death. He would have been, I think, 25 now this year if he had lived. And it's just, I think he finds a little justice. Now, we're not sure when the trial is going to be. And, it's probably, before it takes long for the wheels of justice to move, especially in this situation like this, especially involving police and also involving paramedics who post the job is to save lives, not end them. But we hope we get some justice for this young man. We truly do. And my prayer goes out to his family and to his mother and anybody that knew him. He looked a nice kid. I mean, he could be one of my nephews. He could be your nephew, could be your brother or your child. And I think these men, who were involved in his murder should be prosecuted to the furthest. But we all know the system's going to do. If the most, they might get a few years, or not even no years at all. But you know what? They have to live with this the rest of their soul. And these men have to walk with this on their, what they did. They committed murder and they know it. And, and maybe someday if the justice of manslaughter don't get them, eventually the justice of God law will. It's me, Auaroa George Page. Don't subscribe. I'm out.